Hello, I would like to welcome you to officer training for club treasurers in Ukraine. This is a significant adaptation of the standard Toastmasters International slideshow for treasurers. Conditions are different in Ukraine, and this presentation has been significantly modified. As you enter this training, you should have a copy of the Toastmasters Treasury Policy for Ukraine in front of you and a pencil to mark it up. If you are watching this presentation on a YouTube video, you should also have a copy of the PowerPoint slides. The notes page in the slide presentation have a text version of this presentation. Although this Ukraine-specific version of the presentation will be more useful, you should also have downloaded copies of the Toastmaster International references for the treasurer. Those links can be copied from the hard copy version of this presentation. This presentation is designed to be presented live as well as seen as a video. The objective is to identify your role in the club. You are the chief money person. The treasurer is a member of the executive committee, the 7 elected officers and the past president who run the club. Your collective judgment steers the club and gives it continuity from year to year. Lastly, I will identify resources available to you as treasurer. These include Toastmasters International materials, which by their very nature must be quite general, and reference materials we have developed covering specific conditions that you encounter here in Ukraine. As you are watching this on a video, I ask that you please have a pencil at hand and write down questions that come up as you watch. In a live presentation, we will ask you to feel free to interrupt and ask those questions. The Toastmasters International format for this presentation includes an interactive brainstorming session. The time will be better spent in this presentation by having impromptu discussions slide by slide as I go through the material. Keep in mind that we have dedicated an hour to this presentation, and my slides take about 30 minutes. With that in mind, please feel free to break in when you have a question. You are an important part of this training. The treasurer's first responsibility is to manage the club money. In Ukraine, this means taking care of up to $1,000 in cash. Managing the money also involves keeping financial records. The treasurer must record every financial transaction for the club and be able to produce summary level reports needed to plan and manage the club finances. While the treasurer keeps financial records at the local level, Toastmasters International keeps its own records of membership and dues payment. Because the local and international levels should agree, the treasurer generally takes the lead in maintaining the Toastmasters International membership record. The treasurer, as the person responsible for money, handles dues collections, payments to Toastmasters International, and other disbursements such as for club administrative expenses and club events. The treasurer is one of the 8 people on the executive committee and serves as the lead advisor on financial matters. The treasurer takes the lead in club budgeting and recommending dues levels for each 6 months period. There are 4 pieces of essential information for each new member. We need the member's name. It is a good practice to get it spelled in both Cyrillic and Latin. This makes it easier to decipher handwriting and ensures consistent usage. For instance, there are half a dozen ways to write the name Tanya. We need the member's email. This is our primary means of communication. You can usually verify the email against the member's name. We collect the member's phone or phones. Today in Ukraine, almost everybody has a cell phone. The last piece of data we need to collect is the member's street address. Ideally, the treasurer should collect the dues and all of this data at the same time. It is awkward to deal with unpaid members or to decide when to get rid of data for people who apparently will never join. The data needs to be validated either by the VP membership or the treasurer. The first step is to make sure that the name is understandable. It is best to do this right after the new member has written it down. Sometimes it takes a phone call to straighten things out. You should also validate their mailing address, especially if you're going to have the Toastmasters magazine and the Competent Communicator manual sent to their home address. Make sure that the street name exists within the city and that the postal code is right for the street name and building number. A simple Google query can answer this question quickly. For our meeting place, I would enter Kod Posta Gorkovo 14. As soon as you have collected all of the data, and before you put it into the Toastmasters International database, confirm it with the member. Send an email to the new member welcoming them to the club. Send copies to the VP Education so the new member can get on the agenda, and the VP membership and the club president. This gives you an opportunity to send a link to an electronic copy of the Competent Communicator manual. Once you get confirmation from the member that the data is correct, you can enter it into the Toastmasters International database. The treasurer should be conscientious in reporting financial transactions. There is nothing more embarrassing than discovering a dues payment in your pocket 2 days after the meeting and not remembering who paid you. Therefore, it's a good discipline to always bring a pencil and paper to the meetings so you can take notes on every financial transaction that takes place. These may be dues payments or disbursements requested by other officers. The first place to record the transaction is in the club books, in Excel, or preferably in an accounting software package. In Ukraine, this is usually a Hryvnia transaction. As long as your club's books are accurate, you can afford to wait a while to batch payments to Toastmasters International, once or twice a month. Paying them requires using a personal bank card and then reimbursing the holder of that card, usually the treasurer, and it's almost always a US dollar transaction. The last step in the dues payment process is to record the bank payment in the club accounts, again using Excel or the accounting software. You will discover through your own experience which reports are essential for running the club. I am going to describe the 5 which I find most important. I have chosen to describe the reports first to give you an appreciation of the data that is necessary to produce them. If you do not collect all of the necessary data at the time of the transaction, you won't have what it takes to produce the reports when you need them. The 5 major reports I will describe next are the balance sheet report, dues and book payments by member, membership roster, the annual profit and loss statement, and the special events reports. In the case of Art Talkers, the club birthday, picnics, and so on. The balance sheet report is the easiest and most frequently used. You should be able to produce it on demand. The balance sheet shows how much money there is for the club to spend. In Ukraine, there are always cash accounts for US dollars, which are required to pay Toastmasters International, and Ukrainian hryvnia. There can easily be more accounts. If 2 or more people are holding cash, it makes sense to track how much each of them has separately. If there is money in a bank account or a bank safe deposit box, that would be a separate account. This report from Art Talkers shows that the treasurer holds cash in dollars and hryvnia, as expected. There is also a third account, accruals, showing money owed. At the time this report was made, the club was waiting to open a post office box at a Ukrainian post office. The club needs a more reliable means of receiving manuals, Competent Communicator manuals from Toastmasters International, so it needs a post office box. While we were waiting to open the P.O. box, we allowed new members to give speeches, but we couldn't register them with Toastmasters International until we had an address. The accruals line here shows the amount of money that we owed Toastmasters International, money we had on hand, but was not free for the club to spend. The profit and loss statement is essential to a business. It shows, by accounting period, whether or not the business made money. It's the same for a club. This one shows that the Art Talkers Club lost a little money in the first quarter of the recently ended 6 months, but made money in the second quarter. The profit and loss can be presented in either dollars or hryvnia. Hryvnia makes more sense in the Ukrainian context. The most significant use of this report is to determine an appropriate level of club dues for the upcoming 6-month periods. It is very important to use an appropriate exchange rate in producing financial reports. The ability to set the exchange rate is a major advantage of using accounting software. For a balance sheet report, the appropriate exchange rate is the most recent one available from the Internet. For historical reports such as profit and loss, the rate should be an average for the period covered. If the period is long enough that there was a substantial exchange rate fluctuation, it may be necessary to produce separate reports for separate periods using the appropriate exchange rates, export the reports to Excel, and consolidate them. One of the upcoming reports in this presentation is the Art Talkers Club birthday party expenditures. It compares data starting in years 2014. A hryvnia in 2014 is not the same as a hryvnia in 2017. We can use the report as produced, recognizing its shortcomings, or we could produce a report year by year and translate the dollars into hryvnia for each of those years.